All right, so let's look at some tips to make your page more responsive when designing. So I'm going to delete everything here, everything inside body. Let me remove all styles as well. I'll leave the style tags as they are. So now we are back to square one. Okay, so what I want to do is show images. The way you can do images is, let's say I have an image img with a source image.jpg, and I try to view this. This is the image right here. Now, if I want the image to follow the screen width, now with responsive design, for you to be able to see how things look on different screen sizes, you have to find the responsive design tools. So with Firefox, they're right here. You click this button, top right, and then more tools and responsive design. So Chrome, I think, has a different method to get this system. So here I can adjust the screen size to see what's going on. Now, if this image, for example, has a style, let me style things here. This image has a, let's say I set a width of 800 pixels like this. Let me put that there and refresh. So the image will be here, but if the screen resizes here, then we're going to have a problem because I'm cutting off the image now, and if I reduce, you can see the problem here. Now, the way you know that your page is not responsive is that if you squeeze it to a specific width, usually the smallest width you should ever go is 350 pixels. That's good for fonts. If you see a scroll bar at the bottom here, then it means your page is not responsive because somebody has to scroll around the page to see some content, and this means it's not responsive. So you shouldn't have a scroll bar at the bottom here up to the minimum. Once you set your minimum value, you maybe want to set this to 400 pixels, but I find 350 is quite good, or maybe 375 at most. So you shouldn't see a scroll bar down here. So how can we fix this problem? Now, one way we can fix this is to make the image, instead of give it a fixed value, we can just say 100% like this. And if I refresh, it fills up the page. And as I reduce the viewport, it limits itself to the viewport because it's at 100%. Now, you're not stuck to 100%. You can put it at 50% if you want, so that it always is half of the actual viewport. So any percent will do. Or if you want it to be able to zoom in, let me put this 100 pixels. I can put this at max width like this instead of just width. And then this means that it will always be 100% of itself, the original width. So like this, if I scroll down like this and then I reach a certain point, it becomes responsive. So you see here, it starts to go down like this, but then once it reaches its maximum, it stays there. So this could be a good way to put images so that your page is responsive. All right, so with that said, let's try a different trick here. Let's say you want a 3-column website. So a sidebar here, another sidebar there, and another sidebar over here. So let's try and design that. Okay, so in order to design this, let's use a div. Let's use 3 divs. So there's 1, 2, and 3. So I will put styles on these guys. So let me put a style on this one. Let's have one float to the left. We're going to use floats. So one will float to the left, one will float to the right, but the other one will not float at all. And for us to be able to see them, let's put some other styles like let's see, height, we'll say 100%. Background color, let's add background color here. One will be red, one will be green, one will be blue, just so we can easily see what's going on. Let me do this again, copy this one and put that one there. Okay, so green here instead. So let's see what we have, and I will refresh. So we see nothing here, and that's because there's no content and these guys have no actual width. So let's put some width here to see. So I want to put some percentages. Now I know that the total width is 100%, so if they're going to share, then I have to put them at specific percentages. Let's say this one is 20, this one is 30%, and this one is 50. So this adds up to 100. So this should work just fine. And if I do that, let's see here, width, float left, height. Let's see, let me put this at min height so that we give these guys a minimum height. Let's see if that works at all, and it doesn't. So I'm just going to change the numbers here. Let's put 500 pixels, shall we? So pixels, let's see if we can get them to display. Okay, so finally we got something. So here this one is floating right, but it went to the next it went down to the bottom. So I want these guys to be right next to each other. So this means there's just not enough space to fit them in one row. So instead what I'll do is, let's put this one at maybe 29. Let's try that instead of 30. Okay, so that doesn't work. Let's try 25. Let's see where that gets me. Okay, things are moving, but still not what I wanted. Let's see, float right. Min height 500 pixels. Let me try to float this left as well. Let's see if that helps. Okay, still doesn't help, so I think float right was fine. There's just still not enough space, I guess. So let me try this one at 15%, or maybe let's reduce the one that has the most. So let's try 45% here. So just make sure there are no padding and margins and the like. Oh, still this is not working. So why is this not working at all? Let's see, minimum height, float left, yes. Width, yeah, because clearly there is space here and this doesn't want to fill that space. Oh, sorry, my bad. This is supposed to be floating as well, so it's prohibiting this other one. Sorry, my bad here. So 50%, let's go back to our normals, 30 and 20%. So this one has to float as well, otherwise it will take all the space. So let me just float it left. I can float it right, or either way, it doesn't matter. So there we go. So if I zoom, I squeeze this, you see it maintains the proportions here. So I can put some content here like a sidebar, another thing here, another one here. Now the thing is, the moment I start adding margins and padding and all that, it's going to break these percentages here. So that's why it's a good idea to just put other divs inside here, which we're going to use to put margins and the like, if you want to leave spaces that is between the borders here. So you put other divs inside and then you put margins on those, but you leave these ones so that they maintain this, like so. Because if any, let's say for example I add a margin to this one of even 1 pixel, then things can start falling apart. As you can see now, things are going down here because that 1 pixel here has squeezed the other one out just to give it some space there. So instead of adding margins and padding to these things, just add a div inside here. For example, I can add another one here and say some text like this. So you will notice that the text is right at the edge there. So if I want to leave some space, this internal div, I can put a style and say padding or margin of 10 pixels like this, and it won't affect the structure. So at least the space is there now. So that's how you would do that. Okay, so let's go back to just these three, like so. All right, now the problem comes in because as you are zooming into a phone, for example, you go to your 350 pixels here, it's not a good idea to have content because there's no real content you can add at this size here. So the best would be, once we reach a certain breakpoint, if I'm moving things like this, so I'm going to try and squeeze it in until I find the minimum requirement, like the bare minimum where content cannot fit anymore, and then I'll tell it to break this whole thing and put this thing at the top, the middle one on the second part, and the last one down here instead. That way all the content is seen, but it takes up the full width of the page. Or I can tell it that at this point I want this one to come down here while these two remain at the top, and then later on somewhere here everything just does a 3-line loop thingy like this. So in order for these to work, this responsive design thing, I just need to figure out the breakpoint. So from here, if I scroll down and reach maybe 600 pixels, because I can see it from here, or I can just type it in, I think this is a good point to remove this one and let the two share the space, but we put this one at the bottom. So how exactly can we do that? Now we can do that by using styles here. So what I will do is I will name these divs so that I can style them. So the first one will be, I'm going to use classes, or I can use IDs. So just say div1, okay, or you can call them sidebars, or sidebar, main, content, etc. So maybe let me name them like that. This one is the left sidebar, and this one is the center, and then finally I will have one on the right hand side. Then I can get all the styles for this one. So the reason I'm shifting to this is because I want to have them change their styles. Now if the styles are directly entered here, I can't change them here, so it's better I use the style section here. That way I can adjust them later. So let me do this. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So cut that and put it here. All right, great. So like this, now I need to name them with the IDs. So instead of style, let me change this to ID and then give proper IDs here. One of them is left, one is right, one is center, and this one is center. Okay, like that. So if I do this and refresh, nothing has changed, which means everything is good. So what I need to do is I give the styles like this as they are. So these are the styles for the main page as seen on the desktop, right? But then I can add what is known as a media query down here. So if I do this and say at media and then say screen and then open and close bracket like this, I can do this. So in here I will put max width, it has to be like this, and then I'll put 600 pixels because that's where I've identified a breakpoint. So this is how you create a breakpoint. So at this point, whatever styles you add in here will affect this. So it's like ditching these styles and putting new ones completely. So which means I can completely change everything about the page because these styles will not apply anymore if they're replaced by styles in here. So in order for me to replace a style, even the colors, I can change the colors of the contents of these things. So for example, I want this one to be purple. So what I can do is copy the left and paste it here so that you can see what will happen here. Let me do this. So whatever thing I want to change, I just add it in here. So like for example, the background color, it may be here and maybe it's not in here, or I can, if it is in here, it will still be replaced. If it's not in there, it will be created. So no problem. Here I'm just going to change this to purple like this. Yes. So simple. These styles here apply only when the screen is 600 pixels and below. These ones will apply above 600, and the order is important. If I move this to the top there, this won't work, because remember that the last style always wins. So since there's background red here, but then later on down the line I put background purple, this one will win for as long as the screen is less than 600 pixels. So let's see if this changes to purple, and as you can see it does. But look what happens if I extend the page. It goes back to red, and then once I reach 600 it goes to purple. So this just shows you that you can change anything about these things as they at any point of the screen. So you can create more of these media queries like this, and then you do something else when we reach maybe 400 pixels like this, right? So for now, let's deal with the first breakpoint. So I just want all of these to have something change. So I'll copy the entire thing into here. So let me move that like so. Yes. So what do I want to change here? I want the rest of these things will remain the same, like the floating, the minimum height, and the background color. So I'll remove these because I don't need to change them. Same thing here. The only thing I need to change is the width. So I'll leave these ones be, because it doesn't make sense to change them at this point. So for example, this one, I don't want this one to float, so I can leave the float here. I don't want the very right one. I'll say float none. Okay, so let's try that and let's refresh. So you see, once I get to 600, so let's go to 600, this one disappears because it goes down. It's no longer floating. And then what I want is the width of it to be 100%. So let's see that in action. Oops. What's going on? So maybe if I just change the width, let me remove this float. Right, let's see. Oops, so it doesn't, oh, there we go. So it does work. So I've increased the width to 100% at this point, so it goes to this. But then these two are now sharing the space here, so let me increase their percentages as well. Maybe I'll put this one at 30% and this one 70% to make 100. So at this point, if I refresh, then they share the space like this. So this is changing the layout halfway through. So here it's like this because there's enough space for desktops, and then when you reach 600 pixels, this is what happens. So this could be on a tablet, for example. So you can find out how many breakpoints you want. It's entirely up to you, and you find out the popular screen sizes so that you use those as breakpoints if you want. And now if we get to maybe, let's see, 350 or maybe even less, maybe 400, then we change things again to make all of them 100%. So I can just copy this and put it here, so that once we get to 400 pixels now, we just put 100% on all of these like that. So let me refresh now, and boom, like that. So you see there's 100%, 100, 100. This way the content is more visible. Maybe there's a menu here, it will be more visible, and the content, and then the other bar. But then if we increase the screen size, we get to a point where it's tablet size, and then finally computer size. So it's up to you to decide which breakpoints you want to put, what numbers here, and also you can put as many breakpoints as you want. It will work like that. So this is how responsive design works. Now you're not stuck to just changing the width like I had said. You can change the background colors of things, you can change how they are floating, you can change their display. Anything can be changed as long as it's a style. Once you add it in here, it will take effect for as long as it's 600 pixels and below, and 400 pixels and below, this will take over. So you can completely redesign your page. You can hide certain things. For example, if we get to the last one, I can say display none here, and you will notice that at the very end, if I refresh the page at the very end, the blue thing would disappear. As you can see now, it's no longer here. But if I go back here, it appears again. Okay, so you can really go to town with this and just change any of the properties that you want, any of the styles, and it's going to turn out just fine. Alrighty then. And now we look at colors.